Hi Chidambaram.
Hi Harish.
Hi, I'm Harish. I run an architecture practice called Studio Art Plus R with Rohini Raghavan. I was born and brought up in Chennai. I studied a little bit in Trichy, in Netherlands, worked in Bombay before moving back to Chennai.
Hi, I'm Chidambaram, born and raised in Chennai, so a Chennai boy. I studied and worked in Europe for a little while, then lived in Kerala for a few years. I was traveling around the country for a couple of years after. Been back in Chennai now more than a decade. Our work largely revolves around the real estate space. We have 3 businesses. Places of Impact is a rental housing company that does segments from low-income housing to co-living. We run a Sanctuary, which is our real estate brand, which operates in the premium luxury space of apartments within the core city, and a housing finance platform called Capitable. So Harish, can you share a little bit about your childhood? What was Chennai like in those days? How was it growing up?
Chennai for me was, I think the Chennai experience was a limited Chennai. I have memories of sitting on the Westmampalam station and looking at trains pass by. I have memories of going to the beach. I have memories of Saranam Bhavan. And then we finally ended up settling in KK Nagar. And KK Nagar then had a playground for every sector. So that was how I spent most of my time, playing football in all those, grounds.
Very nice.
By the way, you both are from PhD, but
Oh, really?
from Kekinagar and you're
Okay.
Nugambakam.
All right.
Interesting. Good to know.
So, how was your childhood?
I think it was protected in some sense. Like you said, Nugambakam was home, Tinagar was school. All the friends lived in and around. So that's why you ended up cycling, and you knew every juice shop on the street. You played street cricket in Somasundaram ground. And the usual landmarks, Marina, Prarthana once in a while. And I think at that point, maybe Adyar was the edge of civilization, Vesnagar. Anything beyond that felt, sort of back of the beyond. But it was great. I think Chennai was a fabulous city to grow up in. Everybody was very hospitable. It is a fabulous city. I think still is a fabulous city to grow up in. I miss that my son can't play street cricket anymore.
I agree.
If anything, that's my one grouse.
What's your relationship with Chennai like?
So I think Chennai in your 20s and 30s is very different from Chennai in your 40s and 50s. Now I feel very much at peace with the city. Maybe 30s is a Bangalore city, 20s is a Bombay city, right? People have perspective on these things. But I think at the moment, being a father, being an entrepreneur, being part of society here on out, I actually think it's great. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy that I went out. I think that's a part of the essential rites of passage. I think it's great to have one leg out for a few years and then come back. So you also in some sense value coming back.
I totally agree with you. I think it was extremely important that I also had experiences outside. I kind of understood when I went out how important the culture of what you've grown up with. There is a very unspoken definition of your identity that is very much connected to your experiences, your childhood, your memories. And that's definitely one of the reasons that I moved back to Chennai. But like you said, I think Chennai is definitely something that you experience a little more aged. So 30 plus.
Old wine.
Yes.
Chennai is a vintage. I read a quote many years ago and it stayed with me. The 3 biggest decisions you'll make are who you marry, where you live, and what you choose to do for work. I think what we do for work is very tied to where you choose to live. Because if you're around buildings and architecture and those kind of things, Chennai is still, it's large enough that you can do meaningful work and put out good quality of work and partner with the right people and find people who appreciate it. Now, if you work in robotics, for example, then maybe it doesn't translate in the same way.
Absolutely.
But I think in that sense, we are fortunate that your ikigai is a combination of where you live, and then it's allowing you to put out meaningful work as well. So, and then between your work and your family, then the city takes in some sense less of relevance. So I think it was fortunate for our choice of careers, it played out that way.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think architecture, there is a lot of observation. And one of the earliest questions that I asked myself was, why throw away 20 years of observation of your own culture and build for someone else? And it made a lot of sense to come back to Chennai. And I was happy that I could at the end of the day.
Harish, your lens as an architect and as an individual observer, how has the landscape of Chennai changed?
So I don't think there was a massive change from my childhood to just before I went off to Trichy to do my bachelor's. And at that time, you go to Spencer's, or that was the time when City Center just opened. So you just had two malls. If you had to go shopping, you went to T Nagar, you know. So there were, in many ways for me, Chennai was about specific destinations for specific experiences or specific needs. And since then, I think Chennai has grown really large, yet really small, in the sense that every area has a mall, every area has many needs within that same area. So out of Kekinagar, I might go only till Vadapalani, but you know, the school time pilgrimage to Royapeta to watch a movie in Satyam is not a necessity anymore.
Right.
So I think that is the biggest change for me. And of course, you know, the population has exploded. It is what it is. It's definitely also a sign of a city that you know, a lot of people are aspirational towards living in, which means it's a good thing. I think population makes density makes a city richer, makes a city interesting. But how do we manage all of that is, I think, are questions that we need to pose to each other.
Do you think that the migration into Chennai versus migration into other cities, perception is people from down south migrate to Chennai for better opportunity? Of course, there's migrant North Indian labor, but how much of a consequence that has at a city level is debatable. I'm talking more about, let's say, a spending crowd, right? Lower mid, upper mid income versus in other metropolitan cities that have people maybe coming from other states. Is that narrowing down how the city grows culturally, the way it consumes food, all of these things? Or is it getting more cosmopolitan because of other reasons?
I don't know whether the city is becoming more cosmopolitan, because I don't know whether it is attracting, you know, people from across India at different levels of you know, economic status. I think cosmopolitan happens when integration happens at
Right.
multiple levels. I don't know whether Chennai's demographic landscape has changed as much. I think the population has exploded without it gaining meaningful
Right.
diversity.
Is that your experience as well?
The way that we think about this, and we think about it meaningfully, because the work that we do is downstream from how many good quality paying jobs are getting created. Now, at a state GDP level, Tamil Nadu is obviously still doing very well. It's growing fast. It's second, third biggest economy. It's reasonably well diversified. There's manufacturing, there's services, there's GCCs, there's these things. But how many new industries are we creating? Is it some amount of legacy of we had great infra and the admin was here and the ports were here, so those gave us some starting advantages? But today, do we have a comparable airport with other big cities? Do we have comparable nightlife quality of, you know, bars and restaurants? All of those things, like if you took the category of, let's say, 15 to 20 lakhs per annum earning, are we creating enough of those kind of jobs? Because those people then grow, their kids go to schools, they consume services and demand. It's definitely a concern. So there is legacy momentum. My worry is it could not be enough 15 to 20 years. And my information is limited, but if you look at the best benchmarks, so let's say Hyderabad over the last 10 years, we're undoubtedly lagging.
I agree with you that we are still trying to make jobs through manufacturing, but it's often imported manufacturing where the idea still comes from elsewhere. And I think we need to become a state of ideas. No, there needs to be originating industries right from here, something that we
100%.
think about. I think at the core level, something of that sort needs to happen so that we have the growth that you're talking about.
100%. Ola is actually a very interesting example because they said knowledge headquarters Bangalore, design R&D Bangalore, manufacturing Tamil Nadu. And they did it on the border, so they get to manage best of both. So Tamil Nadu had mature manufacturing that was able to cater to both the traditional motorbike components, but also some of the newer stuff could be batteries, some of that technology, which means at least automobile has taken a step forward. But what would it have really taken for them to say, can we put design in Chennai? Can we put R&D in Chennai? Maybe examples are far and few.
Yes.
I think it comes down to being able to attract the best resources, whether it's capital or the right talent. And cities compete globally, right, for the best talent. And we're not there yet.
So how have the housing needs of Chennai changed since you started Places of Impact?
We had interesting observations across the two ends of the spectrum actually that we operate in, because the labor housing that we operate through Places of Impact is largely manufacturing labor. Migrant labor usually was housed in unorganized tenements, slum tenements around these industrial hubs. Tamil Nadu is actually leading the charge on creating what they call AHRCs, affordable rental housing companies, through PPP models. They have, I think, well over now something like 15 or 20,000 beds, and we've had some chats with the government around this. They're quite committed to making sure that the working population of Tamil Nadu is well housed, well protected, and it's a fabulous move. And part of what led to that acceleration was COVID, because everybody left. And then you figure out, unless you house these people, unless you safeguard them, they have some basic medical, they're essential to the engine that drives the state. As far as the luxury segment is concerned, there are socio-economic changes driving age, demographic, buying preference. The simplest one will be that the joint family is breaking up. So if you're now getting married, you're more likely to move out. If you have kids, you want a slightly larger space. There's more work from home, there's more hybrid home. So apartment format sizes have gotten larger, Chennai and across India as well. Luxury sales actually did fairly well over the last few years compared to even mid-market or affordable. In many cases, it was actually the fastest growing segment. And developers obviously picked up on these things and launched projects around those needs also. So luxury is also evolved post-COVID in a very unique and differentiated way. Architectural styles of cities, Harish. Does Chennai have one? What does it look like compared to other cities?
I wouldn't say Chennai has a style. I don't think cities in India also have a style. I would rather answer your question with how spaces feel in each city. For me, Chennai, there's a sense of darkness, there's a sense of coziness, there's familial spaces, there is subdued, subtle, simple, very inward looking.
Okay.
And I think once you put all of these words into whatever space gets created in your head, I think you could in a way call that the style of Chennai. But today I think Chennai is aping the West in creating these monstrosities of cladded buildings of glass and everything. There's a lot of fakeness, and that's also because of a very top-down approach, either of people on the top determining what they want to see, instead of asking how should buildings be designed, or what should be the image of the city. What's a neighborhood that you are excited to see grow?
I grew up in Nugambakam. It's quite exciting to see what's happening because there's so much of new construction. There's lots of good residential buildings come up that are gentrifying it. There's obviously good office, there's retail, there is now Kadarnavaskan Road, which is starting to look really good. They're making it pedestrian access with cobblestone driveways, and we'll finally have a pedestrian street. You can go out on Friday and walk around and get something to eat and drink, and there'll be lots of young folks there, and it'll have a vibe. And we never had that walking street earlier, so I'm very excited for that gentrification. What about you?
I want to see places like, these suburbs of, Porur and everything grow up, because they are also very dense.
Sure.
It's housing a lot of people in the IT sector, because, you have upcoming GCC and financial technology hub happening over there.
Do you think those parts of the city were laid out originally well enough to support good growth? I mean, what I've been told, by people who live around some of these neighborhoods is, you see on the main roads, they're wide and there's office development, and many of these are world-class buildings, and includes parts of OMR as well. But once you go in, the road infrastructure, the water connectivity infrastructure, the width of the roads, all of these things start to taper down in quality. So it's one experience on the road, and it's a very different experience, half a kilometer in.
Very much. I think that problem definitely exists. And unfortunately, I think we are repeating what has already happened. I think Bangalore has already seen it. A lot of cities have seen it. And unfortunately, maybe we can have some more meaningful thought and policy towards how this happens in a much better manner. So that is something that I'm interested in.
So if somebody had to, they're thinking about home ownership today, central city versus peripherally, would you say searching for a small piece of land and building your own house is still a viable option, or has it gotten very hard?
I think the urban sprawl is too much. I think we need to contain the definition of what Chennai is. I don't think it needs to grow beyond a certain level. I think we need to start to densify the city itself. So I don't think getting a piece of land and building on top in plotted developments where there is no connectivity yet, there isn't, you don't know when you will get water or sewage, is even realistic anymore.
Okay.
So you mean it should grow vertical?
It needs to grow vertical. I think a dense vertical city is always good, because as the city grows, you're limiting the number of people who are traveling. I think it allows for the opportunity to live closer to your work.
Right.
As well as at the end of the day, the city gets richer. You end up servicing a smaller area because your property tax is going to definitely go up.
Right.
But then you're going to service a smaller area, which means that's why you can, the city services of both, water, sewage, everything that is underground and not seen, as well as, better roads, walkability, tree cover, maintenance, and all of that can improve. It has the capacity to. That is the hope.
That's very interesting. So you're saying the government ability to earn more in a certain square kilometer will directly influence its ability to run those services better. And as neighborhoods earn more, they will also representatively get more aesthetic, better functional, better maintained.
Absolutely. I think that will start to look more and more cosmopolitan. It will start to look more and more multicultural. And I think we will create truer urban villages of, multiple art districts, multiple cinema districts, multiple malls. I think that kind of development, only density can create that kind of development.
Right.
What's a neighborhood that you love in Chennai?
I grew up central Chennai, but I've now become a South Chennai boy. The South has a lot more tree-lined avenues now. Life's just a little bit slower. Traffic seems easier. I love Besanagar, actually. Besanagar, Kalakshetra. It's also a consequence of one side you have the beach, one side you have Theosophical Society. Gindi Park is not far. So you have two very large lungs of the city. And every time you start to drive through Annie Besant Road in the evening, it's somewhat dimly lit. It's a beautiful road. You're actually driving through a forest before you get into Kalakshetra, right? So it just changes the dimension of everything for me. So yeah, Kalakshetra stolen my heart, I think. What's your neighborhood of choice?
I really love walking in Paris and looking at all the curious shops that exist.
Okay.
Of course, I really like Mylapore, the intricate streets of Mylapore, Triplicane. I think I like a lot of parts of Chennai for very different reasons.
Okay. How long-lasting buildings in Chennai typically expected to be?
There was no particular expectation for a building. It had to last only so many years. At least earlier, when you had the bungalow style and everything. All of Mount Road, I feel like all the modernist buildings, semi Art Deco, more modernist buildings, were built to last. But unfortunately, I think the aspirations somehow cover that side of the heritage, and very literally, where a lot of these buildings are getting stripped down, and there's glass facades are being clad on top of these very what should be ideally heritage buildings. The question about how long lasting are buildings being built today, I personally feel like you need to buy hoping that your building lasts and you stay put for till the end of your life. But there are aspirations that buildings get redeveloped and everything, and I think people are building for 40 or 50 years. That's my understanding.
Sure. It's interesting. I've had two friends in the last 6 months who bought homes in London. Both of those buildings are more than 100 years old. They're doing a gut renovation, but the basic structure is still being retained, some add-ons and so on. Now, my understanding is they're being retained as homes because the code mandates that you cannot turn them into multi-story buildings. And the neighbors are very protective in that if it is a residential neighborhood with ground plus one homes, that's how it should largely stay. So if you have code that drives how a neighborhood will evolve, then there's nothing beyond that, right? But if there is no code, like is typically happening here, maybe in 10 years it doesn't make sense to demolish a building because it's still got economic value. Maybe in 40 years people think this is anyway not such a great building anymore. Aspirations have changed. I need new amenities. And there's so much of underlying value to be unlocked here because for many needs, the government is having to increase the FSI. Let me just redevelop. So I think most older apartments that are today more than 40 years old will at least be having a conversation around redevelopment for both reasons, because you get the product upgrade as well as economic value. And many houses are definitely going that route. There's many folks who are just saying, listen, we've moved to other cities, other countries. My piece of land, which my father bought 50 years ago, is now worth, even in the US terms, $3-4 million. That is life-changing money. So let me flip it, let me develop it. And so in some sense, it's maybe unfortunate that those neighborhoods will change and change quickly. But the opportunity is that those can become very high quality neighborhoods with apartments for people to live in.
Luxury apartments seem to be cropping up all over the city. So it feels like people are starting to live in self-sufficient, self-isolated bubbles. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think luxury is happening at two segments. One is you're starting to see a lot of smaller plots get redeveloped, maybe 2-3 grounds. This is only maybe 5 to 10 apartments. More interesting conversation is around large communities starting to come in the city. And there's really only a handful, maybe 174 at MRC Nagar was the first one, such a large scale, sea view, fabulous international architects, high quality of landscape. And the developer did such an amazing job of creating that community because they're really large communities. You can go and take a walk downstairs. It's self-sustained. Maybe you have friends for your kids to play with. So this luxury enclave, of which Bangalore obviously has so many more and other metros have more, came somewhat late to Chennai. And there's now a handful of other developers who've done very nice developments. We're seeing resale values go up. We're seeing rental demand for those units extremely high. We're seeing rental yields on those investments extremely high. There are expats who want to live in these communities who are willing to pay top dollar. All kinds of families. You have younger renters. You have mid-income, child-rearing families. You have elderly parents who have kids overseas but who want the community. And the interaction is actually great. And all of these things are managed in a really nice way, where there's combination of functionality, amenity, community, and that is very, very exciting to see. I really hope more come into Chennai, and there is a conversation to be had around social segregation of these are oases, but if you live in the oasis, it's pretty great.
How do we talk about integrating within the city? Would we want to then talk about other socioeconomic classes also to create housing within the same oasis?
The government had, and obviously you'll know this better than me, but the government had some regulation around doing a number of affordable housing units with large communities that, as I understand it today, doesn't exist anymore. But whether that met the original intent or not is again debatable, right? Because you had, I think DLF had these luxury housing, and then they had the EWS, the economic weaker section housing. But did those get sold to economically weaker sections, or did the apartment buyers buy those and rent them out as servants' quarters? I don't know if the original intent and the outcomes were necessarily aligned.
Absolutely agreed. I think integration can also happen through better development of an area itself. Like I think we also, for you had mentioned about Besanagar and areas around that. You like walking around that, and I think it's because the area itself is developed so well.
Absolutely.
So even if there are independent apartments, independent houses, I think you get out of your house, you come to the public space, I think it's still well maintained, it's walkable, there's good tree cover. It's still not a gated community.
Yeah, better walkways, like you're saying, tree cover, smaller retail, interesting neighborhood cafes. The first one is, I think, to knock down any compound wall above some reasonable height. You see some of these bungalows have 12 feet compound walls, and it really alienates you from their neighborhood and then from everybody else.
Yeah.
There is some regulation around it, as I understand, but maybe not always enforced.
Yes.
You're doing a lot of government-related projects, Harish. Can you tell us something about what are those priorities looking like? What is the government's outlook on these things?
So we worked with the government on some urban, very, very limited urban space projects, but a few schools and public amenities like toilets. And what is very interesting is, and very heartening to see and realize, is that the government is open to different new ideas. They're also investing, thinking about how to mitigate climate change in Chennai.
I see.
There are definitely some reports about sponge parks, general creating, greenery, and because those are all passive ways of managing rainwater, stormwater. Walkability of Chennai is something that they are concentrating on. I think it comes and goes sporadically. Projects are imagined, but maybe not everything gets executed. Kadhanavas Khan Road was one of those such projects. Of course, the walkability cannot be limited to only certain stretches. We need to have a policy on necessity of a footpath, be it any street, anywhere. We need to have policy on the width of a road, and width of a road, what I mean is, like, for vehicles, importance given to pedestrians, importance maybe also given to cycling and such. We can't just claim that the climate is untenable for making it a walkable city, because you have good examples elsewhere. Singapore is a similar latitude. It's also a tropical city, but then you can walk. People use public transport. So it's definitely possible.
I saw something interesting that Singapore has about 65% green cover, and the contrast was Bangalore, which apparently now is at 4%. I don't know what the Chennai figure is. Is there something that private citizens can do to contribute to this, even if it's just your neighborhood, your street?
there was a certain period of time when I think the Besanagar Beach Road was shut down on Saturdays or Sundays
Right.
as a non-motorized street,
Right.
walkable street. People were out on the road and everything. All of that happens not top down; it happens bottom up. You have interested people in certain areas come together, make such changes happen.
So, to other young architects, designers, urban planners, you would say that the government is willing to lend you their ear. So, if you have ideas, aspirations around that, reach out to the government and we can improve things.
Definitely, I think what I've seen so far is once a conversation starts, I think they definitely lend you a helping hand if it makes sense.
Okay.
So, what's one thing Chennai needs to know about real estate?
Well, prices continuously seem to be on the up. So, if you have plans, expedite, look to buy a home quickly.
Is it only Chennai that you're talking about, or
No, many parts of the country are doing well. But the last data that I saw, the sentiment around housing, Chennai actually came out on top. Whatever those reasons are, Chennai is still very rooted to its brick and mortar investments. So yeah, it's looking good.
Just something that I've noticed is that a lot of the actual manual labor in construction sites seems to be North Indian.
100%.
They're not local.
There is a hierarchy of labor on sites.
Okay.
This is an interesting. There is now an interesting hierarchy that has formed across construction labor specific to Chennai. The most difficult jobs, the most physically demanding, the most dangerous, the guy who do scaffolding, shuttering, concrete pouring, has by and large migrated to North Indian, West Indian labor. The slightly easier jobs, but that are skilled, that sit one category higher, like masons, for example, there are, of course, there is migrant labor, but there is still very good either Tamil or Telugu labor. And even within the migrant labor, the guys from West Bengal, for example, do phenomenal work in some areas. The guys from other parts of state become super specialized because for 4 generations that village and hamlet has been doing steel work. One category that pay higher and are slightly easier, like electrical and plumbing, are still largely driven by local labor because the guy can come from his home, he doesn't have to stay on site. He is well connected enough to take those plum contracts and the pay is better, margins are better. The easiest work like painting, internal painting, for example, putty, you can choose to work 2 weeks and take 10 days off, is still sitting with local labor where they choose to take those jobs. If it is multi-story, it is difficult. You have to hang off a ladder. Then there are North Indian guys that do it. So depending as a combination of difficulty of work and how economically remunerative it is, the Tamil labor obviously gets the plum parts. And as you go down to the supply states, the poorest states will maybe supply the hardest jobs because that's how the market works, right?
I think the quality of skill also definitely matters. So a lot of carpenters today are from Rajasthan.
100%.
A lot of stone workers are also from Rajasthan.
100%.
So I think it's also a matter of skill that is definitely also being lost. I think it's no longer something that used to be passed on within the family. So I think those kind of norms have broken. And so you also have migrant labor, in my opinion.
Harish, what's something that Chennai is the absolute best at?
I think the political and cinema art, public art that is on walls is something that's amazing and fascinating. And I don't think it exists anywhere else in India, as far as I know, to this quality at least. And it still continues, the graphic quality, the lettering, all of that. It's definitely a dying art because, printing banners, flex banners and all is becoming cheaper. But I really hope that art continues to live on, at least in limited, maybe designated areas or designated public walls where this could still continue.
Okay.
So what about you? What is Chennai the best at?
I think Chennai is very good at holding on to its roots You can still see ayers driving by on their motorcycles. You can still see people going for early morning walks. You have now so much of energy in the evening on Fridays or Saturday evenings, but equally you have Sunday morning temples are bustling. So I think Chennai has a speed at which it evolves, and it holds on to its traditions, I think, in a firm and beautiful way.
What about restaurants and eating in Chennai? What are your memories?
You know, the strangest memories from college is, I think, in the early 2000s, there was a phase where the best parties were thrown on ECR. So you had to go out past the toll, and there were these guys that had massive tracts of land. They had dance floors, they had DJs. I remember going to one party, there was a lady sitting with a snake around her neck. There were some really wild parties. So you'll stay there, you'll stay early sunrise, you drive back, it's maybe anywhere from 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning. And High Look in next to IIT Madras was the only one that was open, because I think it catered to the partying crowd, also catered to the IIT, the guys who were maybe doing late night studies or whatever. So there was either that if you wanted a sandwich, or if you wanted full breakfast, then you drove straight to Drive-In Woodlands, sat in the car, ate your idli dosa, and then went home and slept the rest of the day.
Is there a place that your kids like to eat in particular?
In and around home, they like
Okay, nothing in particular.
Siklo Cafe is actually their pick.
Okay.
Siklo or Amethyst, because they love the fish and all of that.
Okay.
How old are they?
6 and 4.
Okay, they're too young to probably have very strong opinions. Yeah.
But I mean, they know the names of the restaurants. They like one dish in, they like pizza in Siklo. They like some dessert in Anoki.
Yeah.
They like the atmosphere in Amethyst. Yeah, they've got a few preferences. What about you?
I think off late, my love for food in Chennai is very much with Tallu Andis.
Okay.
Steaming idlis and the different korambu that they have, or each shop is different. So, what do you miss about Madras or Chennai?
Definitely New Woodlands. All my best college memories were probably there. I miss the dosa, I miss the sound of the birds, I miss driving at 6 o'clock in the morning. When I used to bunk college, that's where I used to go, so I knew all the waiters. It's a big part of my life that I miss. Harish, what's a hill you'd like to die on?
Cladding buildings. So that is something that I'm very against, and we are of the philosophy that buildings need to really express what they are, who they are.
What's
Cladding is creating a structure and then applying tiles or bricks or something around it to make a building have a very fake character that really is not what it is. What should be banned in Chennai?
Well, definitely people who honk at you when you're standing at a red light. It's unbelievably frustrating and with very harsh penalties.
Is this something recent that you've noticed, or is it always been the case?
It's definitely gotten more recently.
Or are you just older and therefore?
Entirely possible. Entirely possible.
Okay.
What does Chennai of the future look like?
I feel that it could be a tropical, green, walkable city. So that's how I imagine Chennai as. What about you?
I would like to see Chennai come onto the map for great quality architectural buildings in its own unique way. I would like people from other parts of India and the world to drive through a neighborhood and say these guys have sophistication and taste, and they know how to live well, they know how to live slowly, they know how to value the things that truly matter, they're not always in a hurry. And I'd like the city's built landscape to reflect that. And if we can be a small part of that in some way, I think we'll feel very proud.
So fill in the blanks. You know when you're a Chennaiite when?
Maybe your week isn't complete without some sambar, idli, dosa. And in a moment of anger, you automatically revert to pointing your hand at somebody and shouting in Tamil.
So that's the end of our conversation. It was a very interesting conversation, and I think we hit upon some very interesting points that we'll continue to think about.
Likewise, Harish, it's good to hear from the eyes of an architect who's practiced elsewhere and who's now putting his best into the city. Lots of room for food for thought for me as well.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this conversation.